Good evening, everyone.
Hi, Bernard.
Bernard.
Let's see. Getting our tech. Hi, Bernard.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. All things considered. Craziest of times.
Hey, where do I find a list of the people who made it through the first round?
Uh, where do you find it? Good question. It's not yet finalized.
Okay.
Yeah, one of the judges was late in getting the scores to us, and now our CPA, for whatever, is slow in tallying the scores up. So I don't yet have it, unfortunately. Maybe
Okay.
I was hoping today so that we could tell people at this event, but I don't yet have it, unfortunately. So
SIL.
SIL.
Such is life.
Yeah, such is life. Okay, very good. So everybody had to show up for this, whether they wanted to or not. But it won't. I've seen this. Chris has done this lecture for us before, and it's really quite good. So I don't think it's a loss for people to, that have entrepreneurial interests. I don't think it's a problem at all that people listen into this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Are you guys at all involved in all the SBA slushing money around and all that, or is that a whole different shop that does that?
No, actually, we've been involved helping people weed through some of the things.
Wow.
Even with the EIDL money,
Mhm.
there's still a lot of questions, and we have a direct link to the SBA, and we have weekly calls with the SBA.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a liaison person that we contact when there are questions about someone's EIDL application,
Uh-huh.
so that we can actually get answers.
Uh-huh.
Because when they call the regular number, it's a crapshoot if they get through or not sometimes.
Yeah, right. So you can help them along a little bit at least.
That's right. And a lot of times they have simple questions. They'll have questions about how they apply for forgiveness, or some of the rules on forgiveness for the PPP, what they can claim and not claim.
Uh-huh.
And we help them through that process as well.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So we've actually been quite busy with all that CARES Act stuff.
Oh,
And
I bet.
now the county of Hawaii has the $10,000 grant for businesses, which is a really straightforward application.
Uh-huh.
And it's, from what I understand, it's pretty quick turnaround as well.
Oh, cool. And that's being administered by the credit unions or something like that?
Yeah, the application actually goes through the county, and then it's funneled to credit unions based on the last 4 digits of your EIN or social security number.
I see.
Usually it's an EIN, and that way it gets shared equally, because I'm sure the credit unions are getting something for their
some fee
for their work. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Interesting.
And it's the credit unions who have the money.
Uh-huh.
So they have the mechanism to get it out more quickly, and then they can just simply ask for reimbursement from the county. I believe that's the way it'll work.
Wow, that's really interesting. Yeah, there was something this morning, social media, about the situation of, the state having some huge pile of money allocated to them from the feds, but not yet secured or distributed or whatever. And it just seems kind of crazy, but it's hard for the journalists to get an accurate picture. I think unless you're in the middle of that, it's really hard to know where things stand,
Well, what I've heard, this is hearsay, this is not fact, okay?
Yeah.
is that there's a large percentage of the last CARES Act money that has not yet been distributed.
Right, right.
And that is money that has gone through states and then in the case of Hawaii, subsequently down through various counties.
Uh-huh.
So I believe each state, and that has to do with the United States being a federation of states,
Right.
so that the states would know best how it should be distributed. The states and counties, of course, are taking large chunks of that, which was understood to reimburse them for a lot of the
Yeah.
costs they have incurred.
Yeah. Right. Well, people are still signing in, so we don't want to start until we get everybody on board, huh?
Yeah, we were just chit-chatting about the SBA and the CARES Act and all that cool stuff. So
Very good. We're
So if
at,
any-
okay, sorry.
yeah, I was just going to say that in case somebody was signing in and they're saying, "What are they talking about?" You know.
Yeah. Details.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, we've got, let's see, here's two more. Okay. We've got 30 people signed in already. And there were 35 folks signed up. So we have a few more that we're kind of waiting on, but message, what's this? Well, it's 5:31. Jason, do you want to start? I think we have some more people that are supposed to sign in, but here's another one.
So I guess really quickly, did you start recording this yet?
It's supposed to, yeah, it's recording.
And enable screen share so that Chris can take over.
Right.
And then, so I guess welcome everybody. Most of you know who I am. I'm Jason Wecky, the Executive Director of High Plan. Jim is the founder and president of High Plan. So I guess first thing right off the bat, we have to apologize for the delay. We thank you for your patience, but we still do not know who the top 15 are. One of our judges was a little late, didn't meet the deadline for our scores. And so it's right now in the hands of our CPA firm. And we do this for a very good reason, so that Jim and I have no influence in any of the scoring or tabulating, so that you guys can be assured that, you know, we're not, there's no bias from our side. So right off the bat, we still don't know who the top 15 are, but we think that going through this process of the pitch deck content will help you for several reasons. I mean, anytime you need some financing from somebody, whether it be a commercial lending institution or family member, you know, learning how to pitch people on your business concept is very valuable. And we are very fortunate to have Chris Rehkamp do our training today. Before I introduce Chris, Jim, do you have anything else to add?
I'd jump in there with please mute your microphones during this time until it's until you have a Q&A, because we get some background noise if you don't do that. Okay, that's great. And yeah, we got 35 business plans submitted. Those have gone out to our team of judges. They were all scored. And the last step in that is our CPA needs to add them up and tell us and rank them and tell us who the top 15 are, who will proceed on to round 2, which is Saturday, October 3. And that should be a great day. And everybody is welcome to tune in. We will send out announcements for that. And we'll probably do the same process where you sign in to register for it. But whether you're in that or not, I think it's a pretty cool event to tune into. So you'll all hear about that. But That's all from me, Jason.
All right, so originally we had hoped that we would have the 15 already identified and that I would have you guys each introduce yourselves, but since we don't have that information, I'm just gonna have Chris do his presentation on pitch deck content. So Chris has done this for us last year and we had him also help out this year. We did a demo day featuring some of our finalists from the first 4 years, and he does an excellent job at the pitch deck content presentation. Chris moved here just over a year ago, I think, right, Chris? From Maryland, and where he was the program director of the Dingman Center for Entrepreneurship at the University of Maryland. And so over the past year, I've gotten to know Chris very well and think he's one of the really great entrepreneur trainers that we have here. And he in fact is running his own wood-fired pizza business that I particularly am a fan of. And so go check that out. But having said that, Chris, it's all you.
Thank you, Jason. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you all for your time. Thanks, Jim and Jason, for inviting me. It's always super fun to be here. I love working with entrepreneurs and small businesses. I get a kick out of hearing everyone's ideas and kind of helping everyone over specific hurdles. But we'll walk through this presentation. I put it in the chat, but feel free to utilize that function. Just throw questions in there. I would love it to be a conversation. If there's times where, in particular, if something isn't making sense, as Jason mentioned, one thing I did was work for an entrepreneurship center in a business school where we had an angel fund. And so there was a very specific way we looked at businesses, and that was often kind of around the high tech, highly scalable entities. And sometimes there's a lot of jargon in that. It doesn't really mean anything. Like if you don't understand it, we should really get over that hurdle and talk about it in terms that we're all comfortable with. So please stop me if I say something that just sounds ridiculous or you're not following, because I'd rather just kind of bring us all along together and feel like you could really get something valuable out of the conversation. So I'm going to share my screen quickly, but please, as we go, if you're not comfortable just speaking up, throw your questions in the chat and I'll try to keep an eye on that as well. So let me grab the screen quick. How's that for everyone? I think I'm getting a thumbs up. Bernard, you're seeing my presentation?
Yeah, that's perfect, dude.
Okay, thank you all. Okay, so I want to talk about the elements of a successful venture pitch tonight. As I said, just stay with me, throw your questions in the chat. I love being here with High Plan. I also am really excited for Laura to be with you on Thursday, because I think as I'm going to hit on these kind of core elements of talking about your business when talking to investors or when talking in front of a panel of judges in this context, there's also some really critical elements of public speaking skills and storytelling that I think Laura is going to really help everyone get through as well. So I'm excited that that is the kind of combo maneuver this year for us. Okay, so at least 15 of you will be pitching your business formally on October 3rd. All of you will have to talk about your business. You'll have to tell your story. You'll have to talk about the specific components of your business. So this is a useful practice for everyone. And I want to help you all kind of think about those components of your business really critically. So this is how I'm going to approach it tonight. I want to talk about what's a venture pitch, why you're going to use it, what are the essential elements of that pitch. That's really where we're going to dig into what the judges are going to want to see. I have visual examples of slides that I've worked with in the past, companies I've worked with in the past, to give you really specific examples of how other entrepreneurs are articulating this. And then I have lists of questions that might be kind of prompts for you to think about this in your context, or that investors or judges might be thinking about as they're looking at your slides and thinking about your business. And then I have a few resources that I'm going to leave you with. So before I move on, Jason or Jim, someone will share this deck with you also. So you don't have to capture this, or maybe they'll share the recording, but they can certainly share the actual deck as well, so you have that to refer to. So don't feverishly write down the questions at the end of each segment or anything. They will be made available. Okay. We've kind of talked about me, but I came from the University of Maryland running their accelerator. I also own and operate a business, as Jason said. That's pretty fun. I've been in businesses that raise venture capital and outside capital, and I've been on the other side of the table and been able to fortunately give people money. So it's, I mean, I just love this kind of space and I love thinking about it. And so very happy to be here with you all. And I have a dog. That's Teddy. He's pretty awesome. One thing that we're adding now that you just have to address is the current context that your business is in. So we can't ignore that. So I do want everyone to kind of work that in one way or another. You have to name the issue, how it's affected your business, and it could have been an opportunity for you. And really, if you're kind of working through this as a business owner, you should be thinking about how this creates opportunity or what the trajectory is for your business in the current economic context, as well as you can. Obviously, none of us have concrete answers at this point, but you can really show this as a strength, especially as kind of smaller, nimble businesses. We have the opportunity now to be mobile, to innovate, to capture value and serve people well in a new context. So address this, don't leave it out, but it doesn't have to be fully negative, right? Okay, so before I dive into the actual elements of the pitch, I'm going to talk about 3 tools or concepts that you can refer back to, and I'll refer to them throughout the presentation so that you have them to kind of go back and work through these ideas, because some of them do get complicated. So the first one is the business model canvas. Many of you will have seen this before. It's an excellent way. We talk about business model. It's a great tool to think about all the critical components of your business in kind of modern entrepreneurship methodology. Everything's about lean, about testing assumptions. It's really kind of an engineering scientific mindset in thinking about how do we outline the assumptions that we're making about our business and these critical components, and design tests so that we can validate or invalidate those assumptions. And this is just an excellent tool to do that. So you can do it free online, you can have a digital version you share with your team, but it's really a great place to kind of compile your thoughts and go about this a little bit scientifically. So digging into that a little more deeply is the value proposition canvas. So you can see on top there, we're talking about two parts of the business model canvas, the value proposition and the customer segments. And this is where you really like drill into kind of the core part. No business succeeds without serving people well and knowing this well. So having a great value proposition that serves a very specific customer segment is really core. And this is a tool to do that. And then drilling in a little bit deeper, and this is a methodology I talk about a lot and I really enjoy, is jobs to be done. And I'm not going to go too deep into this because I could go all night on it. But if you look up jobs to be done or Clayton Christensen, you'll see there's a real difference between the way we think about our business and look at the business and all the boxes we have to tick day to day, and what the experience is of the end user or the customer and what they really want to get out of that. And jobs to be done is a framework that kind of puts you in the mindset of the stories and the lives that people are living and how they interact with your product and what they might choose other than your product. Okay, are there any questions about any of those frameworks or anything I've said so far? Jason, I don't actually see the chat, so if anything pops up, will you prompt me, please? Good, thank you.
Yep.
All right. Let's keep rolling. Okay, so this is the core of why we're here, which is what are the essential elements of your pitch deck? Really, if I'm on the other side of the table, if I'm an investor or a judge, I want to know that the problem or the need is real. I want to know that your solution has some real potential to solve that problem or capture that market. And then I want to know that you and your team are the right people to do that. So those are the really small bullet points, but you can't leave out this other stuff. Another point is you don't have to go in this order. So you can do it any way you want to. This is kind of a typical order in some ways because people relate that. They like to come out and hit you with the problem or the need. They like to relate that to a specific individual that they're serving and so on and so forth, and then come with your, this is why XYZ exists. So this is one way to do it. You do not have to do this this way at all. And I think Laura will help you with that a little bit as well. So I'm going to introduce the two businesses that I'm going to kind of use throughout the presentation as visual examples for this. So I worked with Aurora Tights as they were students and they were creating their business. The founders were professional athletes that created an athletic wear company. They're a good example of a really early company, not a high growth trajectory company at this stage, but thoughtfully trying to grow a niche business that they saw higher potential for. Zesty, the founder, is a friend of mine and was a mentor in our accelerator program. He is a much more sophisticated, really polished business, very financially focused. He comes from the world of finance and venture capital and really focused on scale. So kind of two different articulations, two different levels of polish, but really trying to attack the same thing, a solid investor pitch. So those are the two we're going to talk about a little bit. All right, so the first thing is the problem. There's a ton of ways you can talk about this. Some people don't even like hearing the problem. You can talk about the need in the market, but let's check out our examples. So with Aurora, they're talking about performance athletes that do not have the appropriate gear to fit their skin colors. So really, really hard-hitting, quick problem. They have it really well visually represented right next door, right? You see all these different skin tones on top and you see one level of tights on bottom. And so they have a ton of really good, compelling stories about this, but they've hit you really fast with something simple and concise. They also knew that they anticipated that a lot of the reaction of the judges for this would be, oh, that's only a few people. That doesn't sound like a very big deal. And so they immediately came with an expansion of that problem to say, here's my story and look at all these other people, right? And so they're going to continue to do that thematically throughout their presentation to say that this is a really large number of people that we have the potential to serve out there. So Zesty is a different approach. Again, they're really polished and they're kind of really specific, saying it kicks like coffee without the crash. Again, a great concise visual example. They're saying the problem is the crash of coffee, right? And I think I remember James would talk about like 2 or 3 p.m. at your desk and just hitting a wall and not wanting to go back to coffee. You've been through 2 pots, but like you need to get through the rest of the day. There's all this stuff. What are you going to do? Right? So he had some story there, but he does a great job here representing the problem. Okay, so I got one person off mute. Just FYI, I'm getting a little bit of feedback from somebody who dialed in. Maybe Jason or Jim, you could mute them. So this is where we're going to land with each topic area. I'm just going to land on a slide that gives you a few of those prompts, as I said. And as I said, you'll get this presentation, so you can just kind of come back and refer to these if you want the prompts or want to think about these things again in your context. So Aurora, really clear about the problem for performance athletes. Zesty, really clear about the crash and the need for an alternative caffeinated beverage, right? This is a great place to think about the pain points, and that comes from that value proposition canvas, if you want to look back at that. But yeah, tell your story. A lot of people, you created a business out of a necessity that you encountered. And so that typically is you solving a problem in the real world, right? I remember I had this guy, Jeff, who created the airport kiosks where we print our boarding passes. And he tells the story all the time of how angry he was back in the day that he was waiting in this enormous line at an airport for someone to print him something. And he's like, we have printers, we have scanners, we have all the technology we could just put in a box and it could do all this stuff. Like he knew it standing in line for an hour that there was nothing lacking in terms of technology to print us a boarding pass, right? And so he went out and created that. And that's really what entrepreneurship about, is like problem solving in the real world. And so if you have a story like that led you to do this, I think you'll get more into it with Laura on Thursday, but that's an awesome place to talk about this if it's compelling. Okay, so this is a big one. The customer, the market, and the opportunity typically kind of go in sequence. There's a lot of ways you can talk about these things. James Zesty does a really good job combining multiple things. I'll kind of tell you as he does that. He doesn't necessarily devote a whole slide to all of these things, but he represents them all really well. The customer is, who are you trying to serve, right? The market is, how many of those people are out there? And the opportunity is, how much of that opportunity can you capture viably within X period of time? So we'll look at some examples and we can kind of dig in. So Aurora Tights is talking about a really specific customer base. They've already told the story, their personal story of individuals that are doing this. They talk about serving teams, whole teams purchase this athletic gear, and then expanding into professionals as well. They want to show that it's a large opportunity, right? They keep talking about, well, sorry, you didn't see the pitch, but I did. They keep on this theme of legitimizing their market through saying, look at all these people that we could serve, essentially. And then that opportunity slide will really typically often look like this, where you're saying, oh, there's this huge pie out there, and we can capture, or if we capture, let's say, 2% of this enormous, number, 474 million, that's still a significant business for us. So the articulation often is like, the market's huge and we only need a little piece of the pie. And later we're going to show you how we get there, which is kind of the go-to-market strategy that we'll talk about in a little bit, your business model and go-to-market. So that's Aurora. Zesty is a little more granular. They're really articulating that they know their customer here. And it's easier for them. They have a ton of customers. So they have data to show who exactly is purchasing this, and that helps them kind of drive future purchases or kind of project out how they're going to capture more audience. They do a really good job also talking about the market and opportunity. So they're saying, this kind of bold line, we are pulling customers from outside the traditional tea market. You have a really visual example of like them sitting at the nexus of these big markets, and that there's a huge opportunity there. I like this slide. And this is one that's kind of like demonstrating growth potential. So if you're trying to say I'm a highly investable business, this is one of those things where you want to show that the market is moving in your favor, right? So here again, we're landing on that. But the most important thing is who are you serving? how many of those folks are out there, and how can you realistically capture a portion of that market? Or what does it look like to capture a portion of that market? All right. So the solution should be really exciting, right? Now you finally landed on like, this is my business. This is what I'm offering the world. We want to hear from you. We want to hear your story. Be visual. I remember when I got a little puppy, I was living in Washington, D.C., and I was so scared for him all the time because I lived on Capitol Hill, and he was always like jumping off the sidewalk, or like we really didn't have any place for him to play. But I was in engineering school, and I basically decided to build a mobile fence because there was no one selling a mobile fence that I could just set up in a park or in my alley. And this turned into, kind of a small business there. And it was super exciting just to see that growth. And there was a lot of really fun ways to tell that story, right? As you might imagine, furry little fluff ball running through the city, protecting from cars, all that kind of stuff. So I would encourage you to have fun with it, be really visual, and tell your story here. So Aurora, you've heard their problem, very compelling. Now they're showing you in a very, in your face visual way that they are the solution. And this is a place where Zesty kind of encompassed the problem and solution in one, right? So in that first slide, they come right out like coffee is the problem and the crash is the problem. And here we are with all these amazing benefits, no sugar, that's a part of their value proposition, a ton of caffeine, that's part of their value proposition. So they're doing kind of problem solution all in one. And that's also part of knowing your audience. And knowing how familiar they are with the product and what's going to be compelling to them. James knows he was on a circuit at this point of raising his, I think, Series A round. And so he's raising a ton of money. He's in front of sophisticated investors. These are people that know the industry. And so what do they really want to hear? They want to hear the stuff we're going to get to later. What's the go-to-market? How are you capturing that? What do your financials look like? And so it's really, for him, it was about kind of knowing the audience, and it was really smart for him to be really concise with this part of it. So just be really clear with this. Again, a really good way to hone in on it is to go back to your story, why you started the business, and also that value proposition canvas might help you do it. But these are all good questions to kind of ask yourself. And questions that I typically ask, or one that comes up a lot, is kind of how are you determining if this is a must-have or a nice-to-have? How do you know that like when a similar product comes out there or existing substitutes kind of move into your space, how is this really a differentiable competitive product? And you can get into that. We'll get into it with the competition as well, as I said. So there's always competition is the main point here. There's always competition. You might be creating something novel or something you're really excited about, or you kind of feel like no one's doing this, but there's always something out there. If you're solving a real problem or a need in the market, either there's something very similar to what you're doing, or there's an existing substitute or a number of existing substitutes that people are currently using, and you have to shift their behavior away from them, right? So never leave competition out. That's a big red flag for an investor or a judge. Again, jobs to be done is a great kind of framework to think about existing substitutes. A good example of this is I used to run a commercial kitchen in Washington, D.C., and there are a million commercial kitchens out there. There are a lot of places that food producers can go to legally produce their food. You have church basements, you literally have shared kitchen spaces, you have restaurants in off hours, you have all kinds of options, right? And so there's just this plethora of potential experiences. You have build out my own kitchen and just do it myself. There's all these ways that you can go about it. You have fully built out mobile kitchens. And so we had to find a way to be really compelling to our audience, which was, we were a really vertically integrated food system. We had channels to other sales outlets, and we could get you to market faster. And there were so many ways that we actually did that, and we could demonstrate that with data, that there really wasn't, it was so clear that we had a head and a neck above any competition that was out there, right? So here's a few ways that folks articulate that. This is a pretty simple matrix version. So you just put on all those differentiators on one side and your competition on the other side, and you check all the boxes and say, look how awesome I am. Don't leave out anybody that's obvious. If there's folks that have a similar brand or a similar thing in your market, you have to address that if the judges or investors will be familiar with it. So this is one way to do it. Another really typical way is how Zesty has done it here. So you have kind of the two biggest differentiators for them, which is health and caffeination. That's what they're shooting for, right? And they're trying to contrast themselves with the Red Bulls of the world, and then those teas of the world, and say like, we're really this amazing nexus. So those two graphs are really common when you're talking about competition. This next slide is actually kind of my favorite, because it still has that spectrum. It's showing you the healthy caffeination, but it also has a really visual representation of sitting on a shelf and how differentiated they are, right? And so he's really showing you like the brand appeal alongside the kind of typical, you know, XY axis kind of deal. So I love this slide. I think it's awesome. But the other ones are totally acceptable. The biggest thing is don't leave out the competition. There's definitely someone out there solving this problem. It's really for you to think about how you're differentiated, what's hard to replicate about your solution. And this also digs into, not just in your pitch, but in your business strategy, all these things are really important. Like, how do you protect yourself against competitors? How do you differentiate when you go to talk to customers? What's sticky about your solution? What's sticky about other solutions? Stickiness is something we talk about a lot when we think about like business strategy, or as a consumer, if you think about it. Like, one of the stickiest businesses out there is Amazon. Think of all the ways they keep you around. Think of all the ways that they get you to purchase more stuff. They maximize the value of every customer that comes through their door. And so there's a lot of strategy built up in that. And it doesn't have to be your strategy to necessarily maximize the dollar on every customer that comes through the door, but you should know the facts. You should know how that happens. You should know how your customers are doing it, or your competitors are doing it, sorry. And some strategies might be really good. I mean, if you believe you can serve people well, then you should be kind of maximizing that service for them. All right, I'm gonna pause real quick. Anybody have any questions or comments at this point? I know I'm rolling through. Typically, we've done this in the past. We kind of broke out and workshopped each one of these question areas and had people talk to each other and brainstorm them. So I'm breezing through this time, but as I said, you'll get those so you can continue to work on it. And I know Jason and Jim, and I have in the past, and I know Bernard's here. A lot of the folks have kind of helped people prepare for the competition as well. So you'll have support as you move forward. So the business model and go-to-market strategy, really important stuff. We talked about the business model canvas and kind of how that helps you outline this. And go-to-market is, again, well, sorry, business model. How are you going to make money? How does this business work? How is it actually a business? And then go-to-market. How will you capture the opportunity that you articulated? So what is your strategy for when you talked about how big the market was, what that opportunity was? What is your strategy to go take that little chunk of the pie, right? So you actually have to talk about that. So let's see how Aurora and Zest did that. So first they're talking about their business model and kind of the underlying assumptions of that. Again, like, how are they making money? This is what we're charging. This is how many times we think people purchase a year, so total revenue and their profit margins. There's nothing really sophisticated about this, but it does articulate where they think they're going to make money. And then they talked about pipelines. So they had all these connections. The biggest legitimacy for them was that they were professional athletes and they had all these connections to these organizations, right? And so they articulated that. And I definitely encourage you, if you have channels built out with big organizations and that's part of your sales strategy, then you should use that. That's really important. I've seen food producers here talk about how they have the inroads at or are already selling to large producers or large hotels. Obviously, in the context of COVID, that's a little bit harder. But this is a legitimizing factor here for Aurora Tights. Okay, so we have Zest Tea also articulating their business model. In food and beverage companies, protecting your margins and these channels, product placement are super important. So again, they know their audience here, right? They're again talking about the retail pricing. They're talking about competition here and where they stand. Beautiful visual, and for them, they have a great distinction between direct to consumer and retail here. So if you're thinking about these channels, this is going to lead James into talking about their go-to-market strategy, right? So we have direct to consumer, highly profitable. We have a retail, not as profitable. Why am I moving in one direction or the other, right? So this is where he starts to talk about that, and we'll come back to this slide in terms of the traction piece, but he's talking about this go-to-market that we have already been on the shelves. We know all these places really well. We're getting a good margin through our direct-to-consumer routes, through self-distribution, and now our plan is to go through these large distribution partners. We already have those relationships as well. We know we're going to lose margin, but mathematically, as he's going to demonstrate later, that makes a lot of sense at this point in our journey. He waited like 6.5 years to go through a big distributor like UNFI, which is really long for someone who's a venture, looking for venture funding and looking for large scale. But he was really, really specific about why and when they would take on that loss in their margins. And so just knowing that is important. He had a really, really articulate go-to-market strategy. Okay, so this is your business model and go-to-market questions, but the essence of it is how are you going to make money and how are you going to capture the opportunity in front of you? Okay. Two really important concepts if you want to understand, if you're really seeking investment and scaling your business, this idea of kind of your customer acquisition cost and your lifetime value are very important. So whatever your marketing spend and is to get a customer to initially purchase with you and how much that customer eventually buys, right? Amazon, again, is a really good example. If you buy premium, how else are they monetizing on you? They offer you free shipping, right? So the lifetime value, and there's all kinds of other stuff they do. But every time you purchase after that, you're this continued customer that they have a lifetime value. So maybe it costs them $30. It's not that. They probably $150 to acquire a customer. They're going to make, very likely, and the ratios that investors look for are at least 3 times or 4 times or 5 times that initial cost, is they're going to make probably $1,200 or more, for in Amazon's case, on each customer. So is that a good investment for you as a business if you only have to pay $100 to get someone through the door and you're going to make 10 times that for every one of those people? That's a great investment, right? So those are concepts. That's a really overly simplistic way of looking at it, but customer acquisition cost and lifetime value are really important things to understand if you are trying to raise money for your business. Okay, so we also have to talk about financials. We can't leave that out. This is the part where I always say, don't put anything on your slide that you don't understand. So some people are really comfortable with finances, some people are not. Some people think they need to show this enormous growth curve. And so they project out enormous assumptions that they can't justify. And I would much rather see the realistic financials than just purely a fabricated kind of hockey stick like curve. And that's a personal preference. You can certainly go about it in whatever way you feel most comfortable, but I always advise only put stuff on there that if asked about, you can justify. So I'll give you an example on Aurora Tights. So this is a super basic and not high growth opportunity, not a super investable opportunity when you think about 5 years and the way that they're growing necessarily. But between year 3 and 4, or sorry, year 2 and 3, they're doubling their revenue, right? And so they very well might get a question about that. Between year 1 and 2, they have an enormous jump in revenue, right? So you're going to get asked questions of, if you put something out like this out there, like, what assumption, what's driving that growth between year 1 and year 2? What's driving that growth between year 4 and 5? And you should be able to talk about that. At least have a theory about where your market's going, why I'm expanding into a new market. As Jason does, or James, he'll talk about that expansion into wholesale, right? So there's also traction. This is a really early stage traction slide. So they didn't have much to say because they were like in the first year of their company, they were solving an important problem, but they hadn't really made much traction. They were still doing product design and testing with really early users. So they used all these things, like, we're going and talking to teams that will eventually be our pipeline. We've got people on our subscriber list. We intend to sell through influencers, and so we have all these folks. So there are ways to talk about it, even if you don't have a lot of traction per se. And certainly like marketing reach is one of those things, because again, you've established a channel that could be a legitimate sales channel for you in the future, okay? So this is ST, and again, he has real financials to demonstrate, and he has a real strategy behind that Q3 2017 growth. Why are we all of a sudden shooting up 135%? And so this is amazing. This is a very investable opportunity, or he can articulate that it's a very investable opportunity at this time. And if you can put that hockey stick on there with real numbers and be able to back it up, then I would definitely encourage you to do that. And I'm going to go back. So this is another place that James kind of doubles up on concepts in this slide, right? Because this is really a traction slide as well. It was his go-to-market strategy slide, but it was also the slide that said, look at all the stuff we've already done. We're on thousands of shelves. We're in thousands of stores, and we're doing really well. So these are more questions you can ask yourself around financials and traction. And again, you do not have to put it in this order. We've already seen James not do that. So wherever this really makes sense in your story, you can do that. And the team. So as I said in the beginning, one really important factor for me, and certainly for most of the investors that I talk to, is, are you the right people to do this? So how can you demonstrate that you are the people to be solving this problem, that you are the people that can execute and capture the market or that opportunity? So for them, Sydney, Jasmine, and Imani, they had the, kind of for athletes, by athletes, legitimacy. We are the people most affected by this, and we know the market, we know the customer really well. So that's a great justification. They also put on advisors that offered them more legitimacy underneath that, right? So they had Jason Goger, for example, is the president of a really big sporting goods company. So any kind of legitimacy you can offer your team here, both you and the people around you, you have to do that. People do tend to busy this slide up. We'll see in a second with James. It's kind of a busy slide for him. But try to be, as in all these, very visual, very concise. So here's the zesty team. They put a lot of stock in Venture for America. You see that on everybody's stuff. And again, it's just kind of bullet points on like why we're the best people to do this, and why this team is set up to execute. You can do it in a ton of ways, but this is just the time for you to tell your story. Commitment is a huge deal here too, especially if you're seeking investment. No one wants to see someone that's half in the door, half on something else, or a team that's only part-time. That is for an investable business, someone that's seeking large amounts of outside capital. They want to see people invested. For a small business that maybe you're seeking smaller amounts of funds, or you're attacking this niche and your goal is really to transition out full time, for me, that's totally a legitimate place to be in terms of, you're kind of splitting your energy at this time, but you're finding a viable route to doing it full time. So again, it's really about kind of where you are and what your goal is with the entity. There's a great question to be asking yourself here as you go through something like the business model canvas, is that last question. So as you jump through those kind of critical components of your business, or as you maybe think about the financial piece, or you think about the longer term go-to-market strategy, you can be thinking about what skills do I have to develop, or do I have to fill by somebody else other than me in order to do this? Am I really willing to become the kind of nitpicky financial person that I need to be in order to do this, or I need to kind of mirror myself a little bit with someone with that expertise? Do I need more operational expertise? Do I know that once I go beyond direct distribution, I need someone who knows broader scale distribution and wholesale accounts? I know this is going to be a sales driven business. That's really like my strategy is to be at trade shows, whatever that is. Knowing and analyzing what expertise you'll need in the future is really important as well. It's just a great practice to go through as a business owner. And finally, Jason, you are requiring use of funds, right?
Yep, for
Okay.
sure.
Yes.
So you are going to want to put on the slide exactly how this is going to grow your business, how it's going to impact your business. So the typical way to do that, as they've done here, is to throw the pie chart up there and say exactly how they're going to distribute those monies to grow their business, to impact the growth of their business. It's not buy fancy swag and then go out to a big dinner. It's how the business is going to be affected positively by this influx of capital. I think our winner, the High Plan winner last year, Sugar Hill Farmstead, right? Their whole pitch was around getting a mobile fridge or freezer unit so that they could expand their slaughter and holding capacity and therefore their CSA. There was a really clear articulation of why an influx of capital was important to them. And that didn't necessarily spell, again, that hockey stick growth curve, but it was very clear that this was going to impact their business, right? So however you want to do that, I would just keep it really tight and really close to why this is important to your growth. Anything to add to that, Jason or Jim?
Yeah, I think, if you can do it and come up with a compelling way to tell it, it's always nice to be able to talk in terms of return on investment. So if you put it into like $25,000, it's gonna what you spend it on and how much more revenue you're gonna see off of that, and put it in those terms. That's always pretty impressive to the investor types and to the types of people we have as judges. So
Yeah.
I would highly recommend that.
That's a great point. So I'm sure Brittany did that with Sugar Hill Farmstead in terms of thinking about like how that would help her expand the business, how specifically how many units they could preserve and therefore sell, and the rate at which their business could grow from that influx of capital. That's a great point. Okay, so before I move on, There should be a question slide here. Yeah, before I move on, are there any questions? We've gone through all the critical components of the venture pitch. So before I go into kind of other resources, do people have questions on any of these or want to look back at anything? Think about it in the context of your business.
So, Chris, somebody had raised their hand and I kind of pushed some buttons and lost it. So if anybody has a question, please shout out right now.
Aloha. Aloha. I have a quick question.
Okay.
So I understand that in the original business plan submission, there was a clause that we would use the funds as we described in that submission. I just wanted to know if we're allowed to edit that to any degree moving into this semifinal pitch round.
Absolutely. You can edit that. You know, your business plan is kind of a living document, and you know, as you learn, as you go along, you want to improve it. And so getting better, you know, more information that you've learned, like from Chris's lecture today or whatever, do it better. You know, you had your original submission. Now the presentation you're going to do in round 2 is, you know, more refined, and your thinking is a little better, and you know, so don't hesitate to improve it. That's sort of what we want to have happen, and that's kind of the purpose of this lecture, for example, is so you can have a better idea of how to present your business, because we want you to be successful. That's our goal, is to help you be successful. Okay.
Thanks, Kaylin.
Yeah.
All right, so Eva had a question. Eva is asking slides per component. So there's no minimum, and it's really gonna depend on how you wanna present your whole, you only have 7 minutes, so you wanna divide the content pretty evenly. I would, you know, give slightly more to some of them than the others, but there's no requirements for slides per. And then the other thing I would like to say is that we will be sending you the rubric, so that may help you as well determine how you want to allocate your components per slide, or slides per component. And then let's see, David Trujillo, you have a question? Go ahead and unmute.
Yes, thank you. I have a question for Chris and a question for Jason. The first question for Jason is, will the judges just see our screens and PowerPoints, or will they see our faces like we see here?
Good question. So we're going to give you the ability to take control of the screen. I've never seen it done before, but technically, if you, now it gets confusing because you're using Zoom, so people can set up the way they look at it their own way. And so if you think you're going to put your face on the screen, you might not, you might still be in a little box. So if I were you, I would recommend just having your PowerPoint slide on there.
Okay.
You understand what
will
I'm
the
saying?
judges be remote from each other, or will the judges all be together?
They'll be remote.
And then my question for Chris is, so you've seen many of these presentations before. What successful strategies have you seen with companies presenting via Zoom like we are, compared to the in-person pitch that you've seen mostly throughout your career?
That's a good question. That's new for sure. I mean, I did, for example, we've done a few rounds now of virtual pitches with young entrepreneurs. It's tough. I think avoid as much of the technical complexity as you can. And so it's nice that you'll be at home, you'll be comfortable, right? Like know the space, troubleshoot anything beforehand. A lot of what I do with decks is, turn them into pictures. So whatever you want to do, you can snip the deck or turn it into some format so that you don't have any formatting issues as you're going through. It's hard to be compelling on a screen and connect with people, right? And so like I was doing tonight, I have two screens going and I'm kind of like looking at my bullet points. I'm trying to look back at the computer's actual webcam, but I'm not really awesome at that yet. Hi, I'm like looking at you now. That's tough. So there's a lot of ways that this is specifically challenging, and sometimes in some ways it's better because you can have your talk track and you can have everything in front of you and kind of settle into your space. Yeah, I'm just learning as I go with it, David, to be honest. It's a new challenge for all of us. I haven't done a ton online, but did that address your question?
David, you muted yourself.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Okay, cool.
I'll add a comment to that is about this transition from in-person live event to the Zoom event. Last spring, we did a demo day, which was we brought it back to present some of the people that had made it to the finals previously in the high plan competition. And one of the most interesting ones was one particular person, when she gave her presentations in person, with a large group of people in a room, she was really nervous and had, presentation issues because of her nervousness and anxiety of being in front of a large room of people. And then when she gave her pitch at demo day, which was on Zoom, she was way better. And what it was is she was very relaxed. She was in front of her own computer. And so, she was in her office. And so it just came out for that person, it came out like this was a better situation because the large room of people, nervousness was removed. So I thought that was kind of an interesting thing. So everybody has different reaction to these different systems, and I thought that was pretty cool. So anyways, yeah.
Right, so there's a question from Noella. What advice can you give on determining customer acquisition costs if I'm a startup company? Chris, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, it kind of depends on the nature of your business. Noella, we could dig into it a little bit, but like when we talk about folks that are operating online, like you can, put out a Facebook ad for $100 and see how many people get back. Maybe you have a 2% conversion on a Facebook ad. So it's something like that. Is the first thing to do is to be on your business model canvas and around those kind of value propositions and customer segments, and to think about how am I serving someone specifically, and I'm going to design. So I think people in Hilo really want Neapolitan style wood-fired pizza, and they want it in this place at this time. And I'm theorizing that, but I'm an early company. I don't have good information. And so what can I do to design a test that tests that assumption? So like really, I gave the example of doing it online where you actually can measure functionally like how many people click through a certain series of events. So if you have an online business, it's somewhat easy to measure like a marketing spend in that regard in an early stage. If it's something more kind of tactical, like I went out with the pizza business, for instance. Like I knew I was going to be on Cam and Mamo down by the Hilo Farmers Market. And I went and looked at what the other businesses were doing, what foot traffic looked like, how many people went through every other food establishment there per hour, per different days. So I knew all that stuff. And I was able to observe a little bit like the frequency and kind of the effort that went into that. And then it's knowing my cogs, right? It's knowing everything that goes into me producing one unit really well. And so I know the background to it, and I know kind of feasibly what foot traffic or what a marketing spend might look like. If you can test with a small amount of money what marketing looks like for an early company, you can get some data that's reliable. But I really like, so I'll say for everyone, I really like thinking about that in a really specific circumstance. And it's hard to do in generalizations, but I actually really enjoy it. So if you want to talk about it, Jason can send you my email or contact info. And I love jamming on stuff like that. So let's design a test around your customer acquisition cost. That'd be fun.
Cool. The other suggestion might be if it's I guess a common business type, you might want to talk to somebody at SBDC and see if they have similar clients that have some information that they might have to share with you. Next question, will you be adjusting the equity negotiation portion of the investor? No, we won't be doing that in our competition, but that is a very important topic.
There's a good like free PDF. There's a ton of good books on this out there and sources of information. I'll reference a few at the end of the conversation in terms of like venture capital investors that you can look at how they think about it. But there's a free PDF called Slicing the Pie. You can find it on Google somewhere. But that talks about divvying up your company, both with co-founders and early team members and early investors. Check that out if you're curious.
The other recommendation I have is Y Combinator is probably the most influential in the startup space, and the document they use is called a SAFE agreement. It's a simple agreement for future equity, and they're the ones that created that. Basically, the reason they did it was because often for startups giving up equity, the legal costs associated with that are so high, it becomes impossible for them to even consider. So they made a new industry standard with that SAFE agreement, and that's basically what people use nowadays, including the Elemental Accelerator, who's the largest accelerator in Hawaii. So you might want to
That's a great
check
recommendation.
Y Combinator out.
SAFE agreement?
Yeah, SAFE.
Y Combinator? Yeah, we
Yeah.
can type that.
Jason, could you type that into the chat there so people see it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Meanwhile,
Chris, excellent.
I'll type that in, and then Eva Lee has a question for Chris. Eva, you wanna unmute?
Yes, thank you. In the presentations that you shared with us this evening, primarily the two different companies, were those presentations that you shared with us presented in such a way that was done live? Is one question I have. And
Yes.
the other question is that in any of your experience of presentations that are given, yes, understand the PowerPoint presentations and giving a talk, but are you finding that any of the businesses are utilizing any recordings? So in other words, whether it be video footage or actual, instead of presenting the pitch live, that the pitch verbal content aspect of it is recorded?
Yes, so both these were offered live, one for a pitch competition, one for our investment group. There are a lot of ways that people are leveraging technology to give pitches. To answer the second part of your question, we have had people, not in this context, pre-record their pitches. There's great software like Loom. If you're going to send it out, you can use Loom, and it's got you up in the corner in your video, and you're going through your deck, and the person can interact with it, and they can see you the whole time. The challenge with adding video is that we're going through a streaming platform, and so if like within your deck you have some piece of a story that is videography or something that's you may deal with technical issues, right? You may deal with the buffering or like not having that work well over the platform. And so as I kind of was alluding to with David, like I would make it overly simplistic for this context so that you're not dealing with any of those big technical issues. That's hard. Like if you have a really compelling video to tell your story, I understand, but I think for me, that's a big risk in this context.
Okay, and the next question I have for Jason or Jim is that during the 7-minute presentation, will there be the possibility that we are interrupted by questions, or are all questions held at the end?
Yeah, all questions will be held at the end. So just to tag on to Chris's comment about video, so we warned people about this last year, that video is a risk because of technical issues beyond our controls. So video streaming itself creates challenges, and basically what it comes down to is your computer's capability to play the video while live streaming.
Okay, great. Yeah.
That's up to
I
you.
understand.
However, last year after we warned them, the team went for it and we had technical issues.
Yeah.
I'd like to add into that in response to Eva's question, is that what could be an interesting situation, I haven't tried this myself, but I think you could use Zoom as a practice situation for your particular presentation. You just go into Zoom and start a meeting that's just you yourself, and then record it. You can record it onto your computer or record it to the cloud, whatever. Give your presentation, and then you've got it recorded in the Zoom context, and you can sit there and watch it and say, oh, I was scratching too much or whatever. But you have yourself captured on video in front of, and if you do it on the computer that you're going to do your presentation on for the high plan competition, it really is going to give you a great practice run of, how do things look? Is there, proper lighting? All these little details make a difference. There may not be any one thing that matters. But for example, Eva, right now, I'm looking at you, and the lighting is not right, so you want to get it. You would want to get that better for your presentation.
Yes, I understand that.
Yeah.
When it comes to live, but I guess my question really is more so in PowerPoint presentations that I get in other senses. I'll be going through my slides, be giving a talk, and one of the slides will actually be a video clip. And in PowerPoint, you're able to integrate that type of media into your presentation. So that's where I'm wondering then, it's not about, it would have been all done in advance. I'd have the lighting, whatever, but it would have been something recorded and done so it looks as best as possible. So in addition to the slides that we would be giving, quote, in like a PowerPoint presentation, is having clips every now and then that are designated already into the PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah.
But if I'm understanding you folks right, is that there's the chance because of connection, whether it's a slide or whether it's a video clip.
Yeah, it's just,
Yeah, there's always
you
the
never
risk.
know what's going to happen with technology. And so if you have a really powerful CPU on your computer and you're not
Okay.
worried about video lags while live streaming and playing a video at the same time, that's a risk you're taking, just so you know. And what I'm
Okay.
saying is last year I warned somebody about video being a risk. They went for it and we had technical problems where there was no sound in the video, which, you know, so they didn't get to present exactly what they wanted.
Okay.
So just know it's a risk.
Okay. Thank you.
Helen, I don't understand your question. You want to unmute and share it with us?
Hi, I asked a couple questions, sorry. Let me, would you rather, to avoid technical difficulty, ahead of time, should we send our presentations to you folks in case it takes a while on our end to share it?
No, because actually the way this is going to work is we're going to have you take control of the Zoom. If you haven't, so this is actually a good question. So on the bottom of your screen, if you take your cursor down, it's going to say share screen. And
Okay.
each of you are going to have to share your screen, and it's going to work off of your computer during the competition. So what we had learned from doing our demo day, and then subsequently I watched other pitch events online. So we're gonna, to avoid any problems, before each of you actually start, we're gonna have you do a sound check and make sure that your PowerPoint presentation is up, because I've seen both not work, where they've already started, the PowerPoint never came up on the screen, or their sound is off. So we'll go through some checks before you actually start, and we start timing you. So the answer to your question is no, you don't have to send us anything.
Thank you.
And so to simplify that whole message for everybody that's going to be presenting in round 2 is you need to have your slide presentation, PowerPoint or whatever system you use, and your Zoom connection on the same computer, okay? Because when it's time to do your presentation, you're going to do share screen and call up that file that is your presentation, and that's going to take over everybody's screen on the Zoom call. So to be prepared for this, so you want your PowerPoint and your Zoom connection on the same computer. Or it can be your cell phone, it can be an iPad, it could any kind of device, but you have to have them both on the same device. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Helen, no, we don't actually have the previous pitches available for viewing.
Well, let me say that if you go to High Plan YouTube channel,
Oh yeah.
there's a bunch of videos on there that are other people's, their pitches, some question and answers from the judges. There's a whole bunch of stuff there.
Those are from 2 years ago though, right?
Well, we have 2019 on there too.
Okay.
So, yeah. So there's a bunch of stuff there. YouTube High Plan channel. Okay.
Thank you.
If you want to look at stuff, yeah. And for everybody tuning in, if you haven't done it, click on the button that says chat, which is at the bottom of the screen, and you'll see all these text messages that are working, as we're on this call, and that's where you can find, Chris put the name of that book in there, Slicing the Pie, also Venture Deals by Brad Feld. Jason put something in it a little bit above, simple agreement for future equity. So you can look through this. You can, at your leisure, you can copy and paste it if you want to read it later. Sometimes people put their email addresses in there for everybody, but anyways, the chat thing is kind of an important function in this Zoom business, if you're not familiar.
And Michael made a excellent comment that if you do have a wired connection, that might be recommended over going wireless for your presentation, because the connection is more reliable.
Right.
Chris, did you have more?
Yeah, I can run through a little bit if we have a few more minutes.
Yep.
Only a handful more slides. Let's. Hey, you don't want that one. Preserved from. Okay, so kind of getting on some of the things that we've been talking about here, some resources to follow up on if you want to read more or learn more about it. I really like Paul Graham. He's one of the YC founders, Y Combinator that Jason talked about. He has a great blog. And one of those blog posts is called Do Things That Don't Scale. So, and that's really about getting into like serving people well, having your niche, knowing your customers well before you try to go out and kind of take over the world. His example is, one of the examples is Airbnb. You know, they were the original photographers for their company, right? They were flying out and sitting with people who were the first users of their company, taking pictures of the houses, helping build their profile on Airbnb. It was a tiny niche thing that was happening in New York City. And obviously that doesn't scale for their business. They can't be the photographers from there on out, but that was where they learned the most about what things were important to their customers. So I really like that. I have a whole presentation on integrity and management and keeping that core from the beginning. So if you're in the early stages and thinking about integrity, I don't know, I can't emphasize that more, but it's obviously a very short note. Why, I mean, like if you've seen Simon Sinek's TED Talk or kind of anyone that kind of emphasizes this, why you're in this business, why you're solving this problem, that's really important. And then sometimes we need help, and that's okay. You don't have to have all the answers, especially with an early stage business. And I think one of the powers of High Plan is it's building a network for you all as you do this. And so if you're in this, the next 15, you're going out in the world and you're going to stand in front of people that might be able to help you. And so I think don't hesitate to ask for help or to kind of know what you need to usher your business forward. Because this is a great context to do that and to grow your network and to build a team or advisors that can help you get to the next stage. As I said, this will be sent out to you so you can kind of look at these as resources to think about other companies or thinkers in the space that are really renowned. And then some reference decks. I'm not going to go into them here, but I just wanted to show you that there were options for that. So actually that's all I have for this evening. Maybe I didn't need to jump back in here, but thank you all. And thanks for your questions. And I'm excited for you. I'm excited to see your final pitches. Thanks, Ava.
Any other questions? Eva, go ahead.
Let's see. So you folks hope to be able to notify us by, I'm not quite sure what the date was.
hopefully tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
Hopefully.
And then you'll notify everyone as to the outcome.
Yep.
And then my next let's see, question is that for those that are going to move to the next step with their 7-minute presentation, will you be scheduling for that day when, who is going when?
Okay, good question. So when I send out the announcement of who made it, it'll come on a 2-page document, and it's gonna have on page 1 a list of the top 15, and it's gonna be in the order of presentation. Then on page 2, I have a schedule of how it will go, and it'll tell you like the first 4 presentations will start at this time, and then we'll take a break, and then the next 4 presentations, and then we'll take a break. And so I'm not giving you exact times, but you'll have a good reference as to when, what time of day that you'll be presenting.
And so during the breaks, that's when those presenters will be doing their technical rehearsals.
Well, the breaks are actually meant for the judges so that they can clear their minds. And usually we have when we do it live, we'll take a bathroom break here and there. But just for everybody to stop staring at their computer, get up, stretch, maybe get a drink. And then we are going to take a lunch break, and then that's your own time to do whatever, and then we'll come back.
So the technical starting up and understanding how the feed is going is done right before each person's presentation.
Right. That's just
Okay.
a really quick 5-second Eva sound check, and then you'll say something, and then I'll ask you to put up your presentation, and then make sure that it's up on the screen for everybody to see.
And is there a backup if for any disconnections?
Okay, so that's a good point. So we haven't set up the first connection, and so say we get Zoom bombed by some crazy racist group that's trying to attack entrepreneurs on Hawaii Island. We will have our backup site probably be our normal High Plan monthly entrepreneur meetup link. So anyway, we'll lay all those details out prior to the day of the competition of round 2.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else have a question? Okay, so what's going to happen is we will record. I'm sorry. Chris is going to send me the deck that he presented, and then we will create a link to this session, and then I will be emailing that to you either tonight or tomorrow, and then you'll have that all set. And then again, thanks for your patience, but I don't have the top 15. We'll notify you as soon as we can. Other than that, thanks for attending. And if you do have any other questions, please do email me, reach out. Again, look for other resources, whether you make it to the 15 or not. Reach out to the SBDCs, the SBAs, and High Plan. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, everybody.
And Chris too. Okay, see you all. Thanks.
Thank you all.
Thanks a lot. Take care. Aloha.
Good night.